Excuse me, ma'am. Rachel's voice cuts through the hum of pre-flight activity, sharp enough to turn heads. I need to confirm, this is your seat? Maya doesn't flinch outwardly, though her jaw tightens imperceptibly. She meets Rachel's gaze with practiced calm, holding up her boarding pass like proof of existence. Yes, she says evenly, enunciating each syllable, as if daring anyone to challenge it further. Rachel tilts her head slightly, lips curling into a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. It's just, first-class passengers usually check in earlier. The implication hangs heavy in the air, a veiled accusation wrapped in politeness. Around them, the cabin buzzes faintly. A businessman 2 rows back adjusts his tie while stealing glances. A young mother pauses mid-conversation with her toddler, curiosity flickering across her face. Maya forces herself to breathe deeply, refusing to let this moment unravel her composure. My schedule isn't something I owe an explanation for, she replies coolly, sliding the boarding pass back into her blazer pocket. Rachel hesitates, perhaps sensing the steel beneath Maya's composed exterior, but recovers quickly. Of course, just follow the procedure. Her tone shifts ever so slightly, too sweet now, almost mocking. The tension crackles between them as other passengers begin to notice the undercurrents. One man clears his throat audibly, another leans forward in their seat, intrigued by the brewing confrontation, and then without another word Rachel moves on, but not before casting one last lingering look at Maya, who sits rigidly upright, every muscle taut with restrained fury. Maya feels the weight of Rachel's stare even after she's walked away. It lingers like an unwelcome shadow, gnawing at her resolve. She exhales slowly, unclenching her fists only when she realizes how tightly they've balled against her thighs. How many times has this happened? Too many to count. The subtle questioning, the insinuations that she doesn't belong here wherever here might be. First class, boardrooms, academic conferences, even grocery store checkout lines where cashiers scrutinize her coupons more closely than those of others. She thinks back to college admissions interviews, scholarship panels, and job recruiters, all skeptical until she proved herself time and again. Always proving. Never simply being allowed to exist. Her mind drifts momentarily to her father, who worked double shifts cleaning offices just so she could attend private school. He always told her, "They'll see you eventually, Maya. Don't let them dim your light." But what happens when the world refuses to truly see you? What happens when you're tired of shining despite the darkness? A bead of sweat forms along her hairline, though the air conditioning hums steadily overhead. Maya adjusts, her posture straightening her spine instinctively. Weakness isn't an option. Not here, not now. Not with dozens of eyes still watching, waiting to see how she'll react next. Rachel's voice echoes faintly in her memory, just following the procedure. As if policies were designed without bias, as if systems didn't carry the fingerprints of prejudice. Maya bites down on her lip, forcing herself to focus on the present. This flight is temporary. These people are temporary, yet the sting of Rachel's words feels anything but fleeting. It burrows deep, reigniting old wounds she thought had healed long ago. Somewhere behind her, someone whispers softly, drawing her attention. For a brief second, she wonders if anyone will step forward, or if she'll remain alone in this fight once again. "Everything all right over there?" comes a tentative voice from a few seats away. Greg, a middle-aged man dressed sharply in a navy suit. His brow furrows slightly as he glances between Maya and Rachel's retreating figure. Maya offers him a polite nod, careful not to betray her emotions. "Fine, thank you," she says curtly, hoping he won't press further. But Greg doesn't relent entirely. "Seems like a strange question to ask someone already seated," he mutters under his breath, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. A murmur ripples through the cabin. Some nod in agreement, whispering among themselves. Others remain silent, averting their gaze or burying their faces in magazines. An elderly couple exchanges uneasy glances, clearly uncomfortable but unsure whether to intervene. Fatima, seated diagonally across from Maya, fidgets nervously with the hem of her scarf. She wants to say something to offer support, but fear anchors her tongue. Meanwhile, Rachel's steps falter briefly before she regains her stride, disappearing behind the curtain separating first class from coach. The atmosphere grows heavier, charged with unspoken tension. Maya can feel the collective energy shifting around her, yet she stays rooted in place, unwilling to give anyone else the satisfaction of seeing her waver. As the plane begins its taxi toward the runway, the rumble of engines drowns out most sounds, but not the unease simmering beneath the surface. Maya closes her eyes briefly, shutting out the murmurs around her. The hum of the plane fades into the background as memories flood in. Memories she thought were buried deep but now rise unbidden. She's back in medical school, hunched over a desk littered with textbooks and coffee-stained notes. Her classmates are long gone, off to dinners or parties, while she pores over diagrams of the human heart, memorizing every artery, every valve. A professor once told her, "You're here because we needed diversity points," his tone dismissive, as if her presence was charity rather than merit. The sting of those words still lingers even years later. She remembers biting back tears, refusing to let him see her crack. Instead, she doubled down, studying harder, staying later, proving not just to him but to herself that she belonged. Every test score, every accolade, it wasn't handed to her. It was earned through grit and sacrifice. Her father's voice echoes softly in her mind. "They'll see you eventually." But how many times had she been forced to prove herself before they finally saw each other? Then there was residency, the grueling hours, the sleepless nights, the whispered comments from colleagues who assumed she'd gotten where she was because of affirmative action quotas. Each remark chipped away at her confidence, yet each success fortified her resolve. And now, here she is, a renowned surgeon on her way to deliver groundbreaking research at an international conference. This trip isn't just about personal achievement, it's about saving lives. Her work has the potential to revolutionize cancer treatment, offering hope to thousands. Yet none of that seems to matter when someone like Rachel looks at her and sees only doubt. Maya opens her eyes, blinking away the haze of memory. Across the aisle, Greg shifts uncomfortably in his seat, glancing toward her again. Fatima's hands twist nervously in her lap, her expression unreadable. Rachel reappears momentarily, distributing blankets to other passengers with practiced efficiency, but not to Maya. The omission feels deliberate, another subtle jab meant to remind her of her supposed place. Maya swallows hard, forcing herself to focus on the present. Those battles are behind her, or so she thought. But today, aboard this flight, history threatens to repeat itself. Rachel approaches Maya once more, clipboard in hand, her smile pristine, but brittle. "Ma'am," she begins, her voice clipped. "I noticed you didn't request any extras during boarding. If you'd like additional amenities, I can assist, but please understand these are reserved for frequent flyers and premium members." Maya's fingers tighten around the armrests. She knows exactly what Rachel is doing, wrapping prejudice and policy jargon, making it sound reasonable, justified. "I'm aware of the policies," Maya replies coolly, meeting Rachel's gaze, without flinching. "But since I'm already seated, and since my ticket clearly indicates first-class privileges, I assume everything included is available to me." Rachel hesitates, caught off guard by Maya's composure. For a moment, uncertainty flickers across her face, but then she recovers, plastering on another practiced smile. "Of course, however, priority service does depend on certain criteria being met." Maya cuts her off mid-sentence, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside. "Are you suggesting I don't meet those criteria?" Rachel blinks rapidly, fumbling for words. No, of course not. It's just protocol." The word hangs there, heavy and hollow. Protocol. Another shield for bias, another excuse to question someone like Maya. Greg leans forward slightly in his seat, watching, intently. Fatima's grip on her scarf tightens as she watches the exchange unfold. Tension builds, palpable and suffocating, as Rachel retreats once more, leaving unanswered questions hanging in the air. When Rachel finally walks away, Maya allows herself a moment of vulnerability. Alone with her thoughts, she grips her phone tightly, scrolling aimlessly through emails she doesn't need to read. It's always something. Always a reminder that no matter how far she climbs, some people will still look at her sideways, questioning her right to occupy spaces others take for granted. She thinks about the time she was mistaken for catering staff at a gala honoring women in medicine, or the countless meetings where her ideas were ignored until repeated verbatim by a white colleague. Each incident felt small in isolation, but together they formed a weight too heavy to ignore, a constant erosion of dignity. Fatima catches, her eye briefly offering a sympathetic glance. Maya forces a faint smile in return, though it doesn't reach her eyes. She wonders if Fatima understands, truly understands, what it's like to carry this burden day after day. A text notification buzzes on her phone, pulling her momentarily from her thoughts. It's a reminder about tomorrow's presentation. Tomorrow she'll stand in front of peers and experts, sharing research that could change lives. Today, she's reduced to defending her seat on a plane. The irony isn't lost on her. Greg clears his throat again, shifting in his seat. He wants to say something, she can tell, but he holds back, unsure how to bridge the gap between them. Maya exhales slowly, steeling herself for whatever comes next. The fight isn't over. Not yet. As the plane taxis down the runway, an older man seated near the window whispers to his wife, "Did you catch that? That flight attendant gave her trouble over nothing." His wife nods solemnly, casting a sidelong glance at Maya. Poor thing. You think she'll say something? Their voices are low, but the words ripple outward, carrying tension further into the cabin. Others begin to whisper too, some supportive, others indifferent, a few dismissive. Fatima bites her lip, visibly torn between speaking up and staying silent. Greg drums his fingers against his knee, debating whether to intervene again. Meanwhile, Rachel remains behind the curtain, oblivious, or perhaps pretending, to be unaware of the growing unrest among the passengers. Maya feels their eyes on her, weighing her reactions, waiting to see if she'll push back. She sits perfectly still, her expression unreadable, but inside, her mind races. This isn't just about her anymore. It's about all the others who've faced similar indignities, who've swallowed their pride and kept moving forward. The engines roar louder, drowning out the whispers, but not the unease simmering beneath the surface. Whatever happens next, one thing is clear: this flight won't end quietly. Rachel strides purposefully down the aisle, balancing a tray of complimentary items, blankets, bottled water, and eye masks. She pauses briefly at Greg's seat, offering him a warm smile as she hands over an extra blanket. "For the chill," she says lightly before moving on to another passenger, who receives not just one but 2 bottles of water without asking. When she reaches Maya, however, her demeanor shifts, ever so slightly. Her smile becomes tighter, more forced. "Anything else I can assist you with?" she asks curtly, avoiding direct eye contact. Maya raises an eyebrow, incredulous. "Actually, yes. A blanket would be appreciated." Rachel hesitates, glancing down at her clipboard as though searching for some invisible guideline. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but it seems these amenities are reserved for premium frequent flyers." "Premium frequent flyers?" Maya echoes, her voice low but sharp. "This is first class. My ticket explicitly states access to all included services." Rachel falters momentarily, then recovers with practiced ease. "Well, there are exceptions. Based on loyalty tiers, perhaps next time you'll qualify." The implication stings worse than the denial itself. Around them, other passengers glance up from their books or screens, sensing the escalating tension. Some look sympathetic. Others quickly look away, unwilling to engage. Greg watches intently, his brow furrowing slightly. Fatima shifts uncomfortably in her seat, clutching her scarf tighter. Maya takes a slow, steadying breath, refusing to let Rachel see how deeply her words cut. But inside, anger simmers, a quiet rage born not just from this moment but from years of similar indignities. You'll have to excuse me if I find that policy questionable, Maya replies evenly, her tone icy enough to make Rachel step back half a pace. Without waiting for a response, Rachel moves on, leaving Maya sitting rigidly upright, her hands clenched into fists beneath the armrests. The injustice burns hotter now, fueling her resolve even as doubt creeps in about whether anyone will stand with her. Greg clears his throat audibly, leaning forward in his seat as Rachel retreats toward the galley. "Excuse me," he calls out, his voice wavering slightly. "Can I ask something?" Rachel turns slowly, her expression guarded. "Yes, sir?" "I couldn't help but notice." He trails off, visibly struggling to find the right words. "Well, isn't everyone in first class entitled to the same treatment? I mean, we're all paying customers here." Maya stiffens imperceptibly, unsure whether to feel grateful for Greg's intervention or irritated by his clumsy phrasing. Rachel forces a tight-lipped smile, her tone dripping with faux politeness. "As I mentioned earlier, certain amenities are tier-specific, it's standard procedure. But you gave me extras without hesitation," Greg presses, gesturing vaguely to the blanket draped across his lap. "And I don't recall mentioning any tier." A flicker of irritation crosses Rachel's face, though she masks it quickly. "Each situation is unique, sir. If you'd like, I can review your account later." "That's not the point," Greg interrupts, his frustration mounting despite his awkwardness. "It's about fairness. Why should someone be treated differently when they've paid the same fare?" Fatima glances nervously between Greg and Rachel, her discomfort palpable. Other passengers begin whispering among themselves, the atmosphere growing heavier with each passing second. Maya finally speaks up, her voice cutting through the tension like glass. "Thank you, Greg, but this isn't your fight." "No, you're right," he admits, running a hand through his hair. "But still, is this really necessary? All this division over something as simple as a blanket?" Rachel bristles, clearly unaccustomed to being challenged so openly. "If you're unhappy with our policies, perhaps you should take it up with customer service after landing." Greg opens his mouth to respond but closes it again, defeated. He sinks back into his seat, muttering under his breath, "Maybe I will." Maya offers him a faint nod of acknowledgement, appreciating his effort even as she feels the weight of his inability to push further. Meanwhile, Rachel retreats once more, leaving behind a trail of unresolved tension. Fatima's gaze lingers on Maya, guilt flickering in her eyes. But she remains silent, her fear outweighing her desire to speak up. Fatima stares at her lap, twisting the edge of her scarf until her knuckles turn white. She knows she should say something, anything to show solidarity with Maya, but the words catch in her throat, tangled in fear and uncertainty. She thinks back to her own experiences, the times she's been questioned at airport security, profiled while shopping, or dismissed during job interviews. Each memory feels like a fresh wound, reopened by Rachel's actions. Yet here she sits, paralyzed, unable to act. Across the aisle, Maya sits silently, her posture rigid, her jaw clenched. Fatima wonders what's going through her mind, whether she feels betrayed by the silence around her, abandoned even among potential allies. Greg leans back in his seat, exhaling heavily. "This is ridiculous," he mutters, shaking his head. "Ridiculous." Fatima wants to agree, to add her voice to his, but instead she bites her lip harder, drawing blood. What if speaking up makes things worse? What if Rachel retaliates against her too? Her thoughts spiral, echoing with questions she can't answer. Would saying something actually help Maya, or would it only draw unwanted attention to herself? Nearby, an elderly woman whispers to her husband, "Someone should do something." The man shrugs, indifferent. Fatima flinches at the irony. Someone should. But who? And why does it always fall on those directly affected to carry the burden alone? Maya's phone buzzes softly, pulling Fatima's attention back to her. She watches as Maya scrolls absent-mindedly through emails, her expression unreadable. For a brief moment, their eyes meet, and Fatima looks away quickly, ashamed. "I should have said something," she whispers to herself, so quietly no one else hears. The plane jolts slightly as it hits turbulence, startling passengers momentarily. Rachel reappears, distributing snacks with mechanical efficiency, her smile brittle and strained. Fatima grips her armrests tightly, torn between guilt and fear. Whatever happens next, she knows one thing for certain. Staying silent won't erase the shame she feels, not today, not ever. Maya's phone vibrates again, dragging her momentarily from the chaos unfolding around her. Another email notification flashes across the screen, this one from the conference organizer confirming tomorrow's presentation schedule. She sighs softly, scrolling past the message, but her mind drifts anyway, to the lab where her research came to life. Rows of microscopes, petri dishes, and glowing monitors filled every corner, colleagues huddled together, poring over data late into the night, driven by a shared mission to save lives. She remembers the day she presented her findings to the team for the first time. The room fell silent as she explained how her method could revolutionize cancer treatment, reducing recovery times and improving survival rates. At first, skepticism lingered in the air. Some colleagues exchanged skeptical glances, assuming her work was derivative or overly ambitious. But then Dr. Patel, the department head, stood up. "This changes everything," he said simply, breaking the silence. "You've done something extraordinary, Maya." The validation felt bittersweet. Extraordinary, yes, but also expected. Hadn't she proven herself countless times already? Still, the recognition mattered. It meant her work might finally reach the people who needed it most. Now, aboard this flight, that triumph feels distant, overshadowed by Rachel's prejudice. How could someone who dismisses her so easily fail to see the impact of her contributions? Greg shifts beside her, clearing his throat awkwardly. "Look, I know I didn't handle that well earlier, but I want you to know, I believe you deserve better." Maya manages a faint smile, appreciating his sincerity, even as she doubts its lasting effect. Fatima watches silently, her guilt deepening. What must it feel like, carrying such brilliance while battling constant invalidation? The plane levels out, the turbulence subsiding, yet Maya's thoughts remain turbulent, caught between pride in her achievements and frustration at having to defend her worth yet again. Rachel returns unexpectedly, clipboard clutched tightly in her hands. Her eyes darted briefly to Maya before addressing the entire cabin. "For those wondering about onboard amenities, please note that access depends on membership status within our loyalty program. These policies ensure equity for all valued customers." "Equity?" Maya repeats, her voice sharp enough to slice through the hum of conversation, or exclusion. Rachel freezes mid-step, caught off guard by the direct challenge. Passengers nearby lean in, eager to hear how she'll respond. "It's policy, ma'am," Rachel insists, her tone clipped. "Not personal." "Not personal?" Maya counters, rising slightly from her seat. "Withholding basic courtesies because of arbitrary criteria doesn't sound very professional or equitable." Other passengers murmur in agreement, emboldened by Maya's courage. Even Greg straightens in his seat, ready to jump in again if needed. Rachel flushes, her composure cracking. "If you'd prefer, I can connect you with customer relations." Upon arrival. "This isn't about refunds or apologies," Maya cuts in, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside. "It's about respect, about seeing me as more than a stereotype." Fatima winces, feeling the weight of Maya's words. Respect, a concept so simple, yet so elusive for so many. Rachel stammers, grasping for another line of defense. "Our procedures are designed to maintain consistency." "Consistency and discrimination," Maya shoots back, her tone icy. The cabin falls silent, the tension thick enough to choke on. Rachel steps back, visibly shaken, before retreating hastily toward the cockpit area. Greg exhales sharply, muttering, "Brave move." Maya sinks back into her seat, adrenaline coursing through her veins. She knows the battle isn't over. Not yet, but for now she's claimed a small victory. Fatima watches silently, guilt gnawing at her chest. Will she ever find the courage to stand alongside Maya, or will her silence haunt her forever? Captain Lewis stands near the cockpit door, observing the scene unfold with a mixture of concern and hesitation. He's heard fragments of the argument, enough to understand the gravity of the situation, but protocol dictates he remain neutral unless safety is compromised. He knows Maya, or rather, he knows of her. Years ago, they worked together on a humanitarian mission in Haiti, delivering medical aid to remote villages. Her brilliance left a lasting impression, as did her resilience in the face of adversity. She doesn't deserve this, he murmurs to himself, gripping the edge of the doorframe tightly. Yet stepping in now could jeopardize his position, provoke backlash from corporate headquarters, or escalate tensions further. Airlines prioritize order above all else, even justice. Passengers glance toward him occasionally, perhaps hoping for intervention. Fatima's gaze lingers longest, pleading silently for someone, anyone, to step forward. Greg leans back in his seat, shaking his head. Somebody ought to do something, he mutters, under his breath. Lewis hears him but doesn't respond. Instead, he retreats partially into the cockpit, torn between compassion and constraint. Maya notices his presence, or absence, and feels a pang of disappointment. Even someone familiar with her capabilities chooses neutrality over advocacy. Fatima watches Lewis disappear, her heart sinking further. Is this what systemic racism truly is? Not just overt acts of hatred, but the collective reluctance to disrupt the status quo? The plane cruises steadily onward, the hum of engines masking the simmering unrest. Whatever happens next, one truth becomes clear. Change requires courage, and courage isn't always guaranteed. Maya excuses herself abruptly, slipping into the lavatory without explanation. Inside, she locks the door and braces herself against the sink, gripping the edges until her knuckles turn white. Tears threaten to spill, but she fights them back fiercely. Crying won't solve anything. Not here. Not now. Her phone buzzes incessantly in her pocket, reminders piling up for tomorrow's presentation. Tomorrow she'll stand before peers and experts, sharing research that could transform medicine. Today she's reduced to defending her humanity against baseless accusations. Memories flood back unbidden, times when teachers doubted her abilities, colleagues undermined her ideas, strangers questioned her presence in elite spaces. Each incident chipped away at her dignity, yet she rebuilt herself piece by piece, determined to rise above. But tonight, exhaustion wins. She grips her phone tightly, scrolling through old messages from her father. His words echo softly in her mind. They'll see you eventually. Will they, though? Or will she always have to shout louder, work harder, prove more, just to be seen as equal? Fatima's silence replays in her mind, followed by Greg's awkward attempts and Lewis's reluctant retreat. Allies exist, but their support feels fleeting, conditional. A knock on the door startles her. "Ma'am, we'll be landing soon," comes a muffled voice. Rachel's. Maya exhales sharply, composing herself before responding. "Thank you." She splashes cold water on her face, steeling herself for whatever comes next. The fight isn't over. Not yet. As she unlocks the door and steps back into the cabin, her expression is calm, resolute. Whatever happens, she'll face it head on. Because giving up isn't an option. Not for her, not anymore. Rachel's voice cuts through the tense silence like a blade. "Honestly," she says with an exaggerated sigh, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear, "some people just don't understand luxury. It's not about having money, it's about knowing how to carry yourself." Maya freezes, her fingers tightening around the armrests. The comment lands like a slap, dripping with condescension and barely veiled contempt. Around them, heads turn subtly. Some passengers exchange glances while others pretend not to notice. Greg shifts uncomfortably in his seat, clearing his throat but hesitating to speak. Fatima bites her lip harder, guilt warring with fear as she watches Maya's reaction. For a moment it seems Maya might let it slide, might swallow the insult and maintain her composure. But something snaps inside her. She rises slowly from her seat, her movements deliberate, commanding attention without saying a word. Excuse me? Maya says, her voice low but sharp enough to pierce the hum of conversation. What exactly do you mean by that? Rachel blinks rapidly, caught off guard by the direct challenge. For once, her practiced smile falters. I didn't mean anything specific, she stammers, though her tone betrays otherwise. You're implying I don't belong here, Maya presses, her voice rising slightly now, drawing even more, eyes toward the confrontation. That I'm somehow less deserving of this space because of who I am, or what you assume I represent. Fatima winces at the raw emotion in Maya's voice, recognizing the weight behind every syllable. Greg leans forward, ready to intervene again if needed, though he knows this fight isn't his to lead. Rachel steps back instinctively, visibly unnerved by Maya's intensity. I was just making an observation. No, Maya interrupts, firmly. You were passing judgment, and it's time someone called you out on it. The cabin falls silent, the tension palpable. Passengers whisper among themselves, their reactions ranging from outrage to discomfort. Whatever happens next, one thing is clear. Rachel has pushed too far, and there's no turning back. Before Rachel can respond, Captain Lewis emerges from the cockpit doorway, his presence immediately commanding attention. His uniform exudes authority, but his expression carries genuine concern as he addresses the growing unrest. What's going on here? He asks, his tone calm yet firm. Rachel flushes deeply, clearly unprepared for this level of scrutiny. Sir, I was simply addressing a misunderstanding regarding onboard amenities. A misunderstanding? Maya repeats incredulously, cutting her off. Is that what you call dismissing my right to basic courtesy? Or questioning whether I belong? In first class? Lewis holds up a hand, silencing both women momentarily. He turns to Maya, his demeanor softening. Dr. Carter. He begins, using her title with evident respect. I apologize for any distress caused during this flight. Rachel's eyes widened in shock. Captain, you know her? Yes, Lewis replies evenly, his gaze steady. Years. Ago, Dr. Carter and I worked together on a humanitarian mission in Haiti. Her contribution saved countless lives, including those of people we couldn't have reached otherwise. Maya feels a flicker of surprise at his defense, though she masks it quickly. Other passengers murmur approvingly, some nodding in agreement as they process the revelation. Greg leans back in his seat, muttering under his breath. Well, that changes everything. Fatima sits upright, her guilt mingling with newfound admiration for Maya. Rachel seems shaken, her confidence crumbling under the weight of Lewis's words. I had no idea. Rachel starts weakly, but Lewis interrupts her. That's precisely the problem, he says, his tone sharpening slightly. Assumptions based on appearances aren't just unfair, they're dangerous, especially when they overshadow someone's actual achievements. Maya meets Lewis's gaze briefly, gratitude flickering in her eyes despite the lingering frustration. Still, she knows this isn't over. Not yet. Rachel opens her mouth to protest but thinks better of it, retreating half a step as the reality of the situation sinks in. Meanwhile, other passengers begin whispering openly, their opinions shifting, visibly. Whatever power Rachel held earlier has evaporated, replaced by uncertainty and shame. But the ripple effects of her actions are far from contained. Just as the tension begins to subside, a crackle echoes through the cabin, followed by a voice over the intercom. It's Rachel. Her announcement meant for ground staff somehow broadcasted, live to everyone aboard. Ground control, this is Flight 817. Confirming incident log. Passenger in 1A refused standard service due to suspected policy violation. Suspect claims entitlement despite lack of documentation. The transmission cuts off abruptly, leaving stunned silence in its wake. Passengers glance at each other, processing the implications of what they've just heard. Maya closes her eyes briefly, exhaling sharply. The humiliation stings, but beneath it lies a simmering anger, one fueled not just by Rachel's bias but by the systemic flaws enabling such behavior. Greg shakes his head in disbelief. Unbelievable. Does this happen often? He mutters, directing the question toward no one in particular. Fatima grips her scarf tightly, torn between horror and relief that the truth has finally come to light. Other passengers react differently. Some gasp audibly. Others glare at Rachel, who stands frozen near the galley, her face pale with mortification. Captain Lewis steps forward again, seizing control of the situation. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to address this directly. What you heard was unintended, and I assure you appropriate measures will be taken upon landing. But why wait? A voice calls out from the rear of the cabin. It's an older woman, her tone sharp, with indignation. She shouldn't get away with treating anyone like that. Murmurs of agreement ripple through the plane, growing louder as more passengers join in. Some clap in solidarity with Maya, while others demand accountability from the airline. Rachel backs away further, visibly shaken. It was a mistake, a miscommunication, she pleads weakly. But her excuses fall flat against the tide of collective outrage. Maya remains silent, letting the chaos unfold around her. She knows this moment isn't just about her. It's about exposing the cracks in a flawed system, forcing others to confront uncomfortable truths. As the murmurs grow into a chorus of dissent, Greg leans closer to Maya. Whatever happens next, count me in. This isn't right. Fatima nods fervently, finally finding her voice. Me too. Maya takes a deep breath, stepping forward into the aisle. The cabin quiets almost instantly, all eyes turning to her. This isn't about me, she begins, her voice steady but charged with emotion. Not really. Yes, I've faced discrimination today and countless times before, but this goes beyond one person or one incident. This is about a system designed to exclude, to invalidate, to make us question our worth, simply because of who we are. Her words resonate deeply, striking a chord with everyone listening. Greg nods slowly, his earlier awkwardness replaced by quiet resolve. Fatima clasps her hands tightly, tears welling in her eyes as she absorbs the weight of Maya's message. We work twice as hard to prove ourselves, Maya continues, her tone unwavering. We achieve incredible things, save lives, innovate industries, break barriers, and still, we're met with skepticism. Still, we're asked to justify our presence in spaces others take for granted. Passengers exchange glances, some visibly moved, others visibly uncomfortable. A young man seated near the window whispers to his companion, "She's right. This isn't fair." Maya pauses, gathering herself before continuing. Today, aboard this flight, I wasn't just denied a blanket or water. I was dismissed, as if my accomplishments, my humanity, mattered less than someone else's assumptions. And that's unacceptable. Fatima wipes her eyes discreetly, guilt mixing with inspiration. She realizes now that staying silent only perpetuates the cycle Maya describes, a cycle she desperately wants to break. Greg adds quietly, "It's exhausting, isn't it? Constantly, fighting to be seen as equal." Maya acknowledges him with a faint nod. Yes, exhausting and infuriating, but also necessary, because change doesn't happen unless we demand it, unless we hold systems accountable, not just individuals, but the structures that enable prejudice to thrive. Captain Lewis listens intently, his expression thoughtful. Other passengers murmur in agreement, clapping softly as Maya speaks. And so, she concludes, her voice rising slightly, this isn't just my fight. It's ours. Together we can challenge these injustices, not just here, but everywhere. They exist. The applause grows louder, filling the cabin with a sense of unity. Fatima finds her courage, standing up hesitantly. "I'm sorry I didn't speak sooner," she says, her voice trembling but sincere. "But I'm with you now." Greg follows suit, adding firmly, "Count me in too." Rachel retreats further, overwhelmed by the collective response. Whatever happens next, one truth becomes undeniable. The tide is turning. Encouraged by Maya's words, other passengers began to chime in, their voices blending into a chorus of support. An elderly man raises his hand solemnly. "I've seen this kind of thing happen before. Enough is enough. We stand with you, Dr. Carter." His wife nods vigorously beside him, adding, "Absolutely. It's time for change." Fatima steps into the aisle, her earlier hesitation replaced by determination. I should have said something sooner, she admits, her voice stronger now. But I won't stay silent anymore. Not after this. Greg joins her, offering Maya a reassuring smile. You're not alone in this. None of us are. The sentiment spreads quickly, with more passengers voicing their solidarity. Some share personal stories of facing discrimination, while others pledge to advocate for fairness within the airline industry. Captain Lewis watches the scene unfold, visibly moved. Thank you, he says eventually, addressing the entire cabin. Moments like this remind us of our shared responsibility to listen, to learn, and to act. Rachel lingers near the galley, isolated and defeated. Her earlier confidence has vanished, replaced by shame and regret. She opens her mouth as if to apologize but thinks better of it, retreating silently instead. Maya surveys the cabin, her heart swelling with gratitude despite the lingering exhaustion. She knows this victory isn't permanent. The fight against systemic racism is ongoing, but it's a start. Fatima approaches her cautiously, extending a tentative hand. Can we talk more about how to help? She asks softly. Maya smiles faintly, accepting the gesture. Of course, there's much work to be done. As the plane descends toward its destination, the atmosphere shifts, from tension to hope, from division to unity. Whatever challenges lie ahead, one thing is certain. Alliances have been forged and the seeds of change have been planted. The plane comes to a halt at the gate, and passengers begin gathering their belongings. Rachel stands near the galley, visibly uneasy as Captain Lewis approaches her with a somber expression. Rachel, he says quietly but firmly, management has requested you report directly to HR upon landing. They've reviewed the incident logs and the intercom transmission. Her face drains of color. Sir, I didn't mean... I understand that this isn't entirely your fault, Lewis interrupts gently, his tone measured. But actions have consequences. You'll be reassigned pending further review. Rachel nods mutely, clutching her clipboard like a lifeline. She knows there's no arguing her way out of this, not after what happened mid-flight. Still, she can't shake the sinking feeling that something bigger is at play here, something beyond her control. Nearby, Maya watches silently as Rachel retreats toward the exit, escorted discreetly by a senior crew member. While part of her feels vindicated, another part recognizes the futility of punishing one person without addressing the larger issue. Greg notices Maya's contemplative expression and leans closer. Do you think it makes a difference? Holding her accountable, I mean? Maya exhales slowly, choosing her words carefully. It's a start, but accountability doesn't erase systemic bias. Policies, the assumptions, they're still there. Until we tackle those, nothing truly changes. Fatima overhears the exchange, guilt flickering in her eyes. She wants to say something, to apologize, to explain, but the words catch in her throat as she struggles to find the courage. As passengers disembark, murmurs of support follow Maya wherever she goes. Some offer kind smiles, others nod respectfully, acknowledging her resilience. Yet beneath the surface, tensions linger, a reminder that justice is rarely straightforward or final. Rachel disappears into the terminal, her future uncertain. Meanwhile, Maya steps off the plane, carrying not just her luggage but also the weight of unresolved questions about fairness, equity, and change. At baggage claim, Fatima hesitates before approaching Maya, her hands trembling slightly as she clutches the strap of her carry-on bag. Dr. Carter? She begins tentatively, her voice barely above a whisper. Maya turns, surprised but composed. Yes? Fatima swallows hard, forcing herself to meet Maya's gaze. I wanted to apologize for staying silent earlier. I should have said something when everything happened. Maya studies her for a moment, noting the sincerity in her expression. It's okay, she replies softly. I understand why you didn't. No, it's not okay, Fatima insists, her voice gaining strength despite the tears welling in her eyes. Silence is complicity. I let fear stop me, and that's no excuse. Maya places a gentle hand on Fatima's arm, offering reassurance. We all make mistakes. What matters is what we do next. Fatima nods, taking a shaky breath. I've been where you were. Questioned, dismissed, made to feel like I don't belong. And every time I told myself someone else would speak up, but today, seeing how everyone rallied behind you, it reminded me that change starts with us. Standing together, Maya smiles faintly, moved by the younger woman's honesty. Thank you for saying that. It means more than you know. Fatima wipes her eyes quickly, attempting a small smile in return. If there's anything I can do to help, to learn, I want to be part of the solution. You already are, Maya tells her earnestly. By speaking now, by owning your choices, you're taking the first step. Behind them, Greg watches the interaction, nodding approvingly. Other passengers glance over curiously, some inspired by the quiet exchange, others indifferent. Fatima takes a deep breath, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. For the first time in hours, she feels less burdened by guilt and more hopeful about the possibility of meaningful connection. As the conveyor belt delivers their bags, Maya and Fatima continue talking, forging an unspoken bond rooted in shared experiences and mutual understanding. Later, in a private meeting room at the airport office, Rachel sits across from an HR representative, her posture rigid with anxiety. On the table between them lies a folder containing passenger complaints and witness statements from Greg, Fatima, even Captain Lewis. The HR representative clears her throat delicately. Rachel, we've reviewed the evidence, and while disciplinary action is necessary, we'd also like to understand what led to this situation. Rachel stares down at her hands, twisting the hem of her uniform nervously. I don't know what came over me, she admits finally, her voice cracking. I wasn't thinking clearly. The HR rep leans forward slightly, her tone softening. Is there something going on personally that might have affected your judgment? Rachel hesitates, then nods reluctantly. My husband passed away last month, she whispers, tears spilling onto her cheeks. I haven't been able to process it, not really. I thought throwing myself into work would help, but her voice trails off, heavy with unspoken grief. The HR rep exchanges a glance with Captain Lewis, who stands nearby, listening intently. Lewis speaks up gently. Rachel, none of this excuses your behavior, but it does provide context, and maybe a path forward for healing. Rachel nods again, though shame clouds her features. I never meant to hurt anyone. I was angry, lost, and I took it out on people who didn't deserve it. Outside the room, Maya overhears fragments of the conversation as she waits to provide her own statement. Her initial outrage softens slightly, replaced by a complex mix of empathy and frustration. Greg joins her momentarily, raising an eyebrow. Did you hear that? Yes, Maya replies quietly. It changes things, but not enough. Grief doesn't justify prejudice. Greg nods thoughtfully. Still, it's a reminder that people are complicated, flawed. Maybe redemption starts with recognizing that. Maya agrees, though she knows forgiveness won't come easily, for Rachel or for herself. As they head back toward the terminal, the moral ambiguity lingers, leaving both characters and the audience to grapple with uneasy truths. The conference hall buzzes with anticipation as Maya steps onto the stage, greeted by polite applause. She adjusts the microphone, taking a moment to survey the crowd, a sea of faces eager to hear groundbreaking insights. Good morning, she begins, her voice steady and commanding. Today I'm honored to present research that could revolutionize cancer treatment. But before we dive in, I'd like to acknowledge the journey that brought me here. A ripple of curiosity moves through the audience. Maya pauses briefly, collecting her thoughts. In recent days, I've been reminded of the challenges many of us face, not just professionally, but personally. The barriers placed before us because of our identities, our backgrounds, our perceived worth. These obstacles are real, and they shape us. but they don't define us. Fatima sits near the front row, beaming proudly as Maya speaks. Greg nods, along, impressed by her poise under pressure. My work focuses on bridging gaps between science and accessibility, innovation and inclusivity. Because if we're serious about saving lives, we must ensure no one is left behind. Applause erupts spontaneously, growing louder as Maya transitions into the technical details of her research. Charts and data fill the screen behind her, but it's her passion that captivates the audience most. When she concludes, the room erupts into a standing ovation. Colleagues rush forward to congratulate her, shaking her hand and praising her brilliance. For a brief moment, Maya allows herself to bask in the recognition she's earned, not just today but throughout her career. Fatima approaches her during the break, offering heartfelt congratulations. "You did it," she says warmly. "And you inspired so many of us in the process." Maya smiles, gratitude shining in her eyes. We all did it together. Yet even amid the triumph, Maya remains acutely aware of the broader fight ahead, one that extends far beyond the walls of this conference hall. Backstage after her presentation, Maya reflects quietly, scrolling through messages flooding her phone. Friends, colleagues, strangers all expressing admiration for her work and solidarity, following the events on the flight. One message catches her eye. "Your courage inspires me to speak up too. Thank you." She exhales deeply, touched by the impact her actions have had, but also mindful of the responsibility that comes with visibility. Fatima finds her moments later, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this," she says lightly, handing one to Maya. "Thanks," Maya replies, sipping gratefully. "How's the conference treating you?" "It's amazing," Fatima admits, smiling. "But honestly, it's your story that's sticking with me. After everything that happened, what's next for you?" Maya considers the question carefully. "I've spent years proving myself in spaces where I wasn't always welcome. Now I want to use my platform differently, to advocate for systemic change, starting with industries like aviation." Fatima nods enthusiastically. "Count me in. Whatever you need, I'm here." Maya smiles, appreciating the offer. "It won't be easy. Challenging systems requires patience, persistence, and allies willing to stand alongside us." Greg joins them unexpectedly, extending his hand. "Sign me up too. If there's anything I learned from this week, it's that silence isn't neutral. We all have a role to play." Encouraged by their support, Maya feels a renewed sense of purpose. "Change starts now," she declares firmly. "Not just for me, but for everyone who deserves to be seen, heard, and valued equally." As they talk, plans begin to take shape. Ideas for campaigns, petitions, partnerships aimed at dismantling discriminatory practices within the airline industry. Maya knows the road ahead will be long, fraught with resistance and setbacks, but she also knows she's not alone. Together, they'll push forward, determined to transform indignities into opportunities for growth and justice. The conference ends, but Maya's mission continues, a beacon of hope and resilience in a world still grappling with inequality. This story only begins here with your voice. Have you faced racism while traveling or witnessed moments that challenged your sense of justice? Share your experiences in the comments below or tag us on social media with the Rise Together. Your story could inspire others to speak up and act, but don't stop there. What would you do? You wear Maya's shoes or Rachel's? Reflect, engage, and let's keep this conversation alive. Every perspective matters as we work toward a fairer world. If you're ready to join the movement for change, hit that subscribe button so you never miss an update. Our next video dives deeper into how privilege intersects with justice and how courage can transform systems. Click the bell icon to stay notified. And if this resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, none of us are alone in this fight. Together, every small act of courage ripples outward, creating waves of impact. So share, subscribe, and be part of the solution. Because when we rise together, real change happens.